Religion was at the center of life in Carthage. To understand the city, its ambitions, and even its enemies' hatred of it, we must begin with its gods. For Carthaginians, the divine was not distant or abstract. The gods were ever present, demanding devotion, guiding trade, blessing harvests, and deciding the fate of battles. Their power burned in temples, echoed in chants, and according to ancient writers, sometimes demanded offerings of terrible price. Carthage's religion was both Phoenician and African, a faith born of the sea but rooted in the soil of North Africa. At the heart of Carthaginian worship stood Baal Hammon, the great god of fertility, weather, and the cycles of nature. His very name suggests majesty, Lord of the Altars or Lord of the Brazier. He was depicted as an elderly, bearded figure seated upon a throne, his hand raised in blessing. For Carthaginians, Baal Hammon was the guarantor of life itself. He brought the rains that nourished crops, the abundance of herds, and the prosperity of the city. In a land where survival often depended on unpredictable seasons, his power could not be ignored. Beside him stood Tanit, the celestial goddess who became the supreme female deity of Carthage. Often shown with a stylized triangular symbol topped with a circle, she was associated with fertility, love, protection, and the moon. To Carthaginians, Tanit was both mother and warrior, a goddess who safeguarded children but also watched over armies. Over time, Tanit rose to such prominence that she was revered above all others, earning the title Face of Baal, the divine partner of Hammon. Her cult was uniquely Carthaginian, fusing Phoenician roots with African spirit. But the pantheon did not end with these two. Carthage inherited many gods from its Phoenician homeland. Melkart, the hero god of Tyre, was worshipped as a divine king, a symbol of exploration and strength. To the Greeks, he was equated with Heracles. Astarte, goddess of fertility and war, was also honored, alongside lesser-known deities tied to the sea, to trade, and to the cycles of life and death. In Carthage, gods were not distant ideals. They were practical, invoked in everyday rituals, tied to the fortunes of farmers, merchants, sailors, and generals alike. How were these gods worshipped? Carthaginian religion was marked by fire. Archaeological discoveries reveal great altars where offerings were burned, smoke rising into the sky as a link between earth and heaven. The most mysterious and controversial of these sites were the tophets, open-air sanctuaries filled with urns containing the ashes and bones of infants and animals. Ancient writers, especially hostile Greeks and Romans, claimed these were the remains of children sacrificed to the gods, burned alive in fiery rites to appease Baal Hammon and Tanit. They wrote with horror, painting Carthage as a city that murdered its own children to gain divine favor. But what is the truth? Archaeologists still debate. Some argue that the tophets show evidence of ritual child sacrifice, a practice perhaps rooted in Phoenician tradition but exaggerated by enemies. Others suggest that the urns contain the remains of infants who died naturally, placed in sanctuaries as offerings to the gods for protection of the community. The truth may lie somewhere between, occasional sacrifices in times of crisis, mixed with more symbolic offerings. Whatever the reality, the image of child sacrifice became etched into the reputation of Carthage, a weapon used by Rome to justify its wars against the city. Beyond sacrifice, worship took many forms. Festivals lit the city with processions, music, and chants. Priests, dressed in ceremonial robes, led rituals at temples, their voices echoing across marble courtyards. Farmers brought first fruits of harvests. Sailors poured libations before voyages. Generals prayed before campaigns. Religion was not separate from daily life. It infused every moment. To neglect the gods was to invite disaster. To honor them was to secure fortune. Carthage's religious architecture reflected its devotion. Great temples rose in the city dedicated to Baal Hammon and Tanit. The sacred precinct on Birsa Hill overlooking the city may have housed some of the most important shrines. Outside Carthage, sanctuaries dotted the landscape, blending Phoenician design with African traditions. Stelae, upright stone markers, were carved with images of gods and inscriptions left by worshippers as thanks for answered prayers. These silent stones, thousands of them, survive today, bearing witness to a people who constantly sought the favor of the divine. The influence of Berber traditions can also be seen. Scholars note that Baal Hammon may have origins in local African deities, and that Tanit herself embodies a fusion of Phoenician and Berber belief. The desert, the sun, and the cycles of fertility shaped the religious imagination of North Africa, and Carthage absorbed these ideas into its faith. Religion was not static. It was alive, evolving, absorbing, and creating. The gods of Carthage also traveled abroad. In Sardinia, Sicily, and Spain, temples to Baal Hammon and Tanit have been discovered, showing how colonists carried their faith with them. In these places, Carthaginian religion adapted once again, blending with local cults and practices. Carthage's empire was not only political and economic, it was spiritual. The Romans, when they finally confronted Carthage, saw its religion as alien, even barbaric. Their own gods were similar in form, yet the rituals of Carthage seemed darker, more mysterious, and more threatening. Roman propaganda emphasized the alleged cruelty of Carthaginian rites, especially child sacrifice, to paint the city as morally corrupt. Yet ironically, when Carthage fell, many of its gods lived on. Tanit was worshipped well into the Roman era under new names, and Baal Hammon was equated with Saturn, the Roman god of time and harvest. The fires of Carthage's religion did not go out. They smoldered, transforming, surviving in new forms. Religion in Carthage was more than belief. It was identity, power, and survival. It bound together Phoenician settlers and African tribes. It justified wars, sanctified trade, and gave meaning to life and death. Its gods demanded devotion, sometimes sacrifice, but in return they offered prosperity and protection. For the people of Carthage, to live was to worship, and to worship was to secure the favor of Baal Hammon and Tanit. This faith, mysterious and contested, still fascinates us today. Was Carthage truly a city of fire and sacrifice, or was it misunderstood, demonized by its enemies? Perhaps it was both. A civilization whose devotion to its gods was as fierce as its ambition, whose sacred fires burned as brightly as the city itself. As we look back across time, the religion of Carthage reminds us that civilizations are not only built on stone and ships, but also on faith, on rituals, and on the unseen ties between humanity and the divine. Carthage's gods shaped its destiny, and their echoes still linger, carved into stone, whispered in legend, remembered in history. In our next episode, we will turn to the most controversial subject of all, the tophet of Carthage. Was it truly a site of child sacrifice, or a misunderstood sanctuary of devotion? We will sift through myth, archaeology, and propaganda to uncover the truth behind one of antiquity's darkest mysteries. Stay with us as we continue to uncover the early history of Carthage, a city of gods and men, of fire and faith, of myths that still burn across time.